How's it going, everybody? My name is Mark. Welcome back to my channel, and today I want to talk to you guys about whether you should be buying or renting a home. I just had to go through this process myself, so hopefully I can share with you guys my personal experience and you come out of this video knowing which option is better for you. There's some obvious pros and cons to each route. We're going to talk about them both in depth, and at the end of the video, I'm going to shower you guys with a ton of statistics. Before you even start thinking about either option, there's a couple questions you're going to have to ask yourself. First one is whether you plan to move or not. Is this going to be a rental property? Is this going to be a long-term house for you and your family? Or are you planning to just be here for a couple of years, flip it, and then get out of here? What's your job like? Are you going to be here for a long time? Do you have a stable job? Does your job require you to travel? Things along those lines. Number two, you need to know whether you have enough money for the down payment. Obviously, that's going to range based on the price of the house you want to purchase. And after you put the down payment down, can you afford the minimum monthly payment? A good rule of thumb is never to go over 1/3 of your gross monthly income. It's also important to know that your rent does not equal a mortgage payment. There's a lot more costs that come with owning a home than simply renting, and we're going to talk about those right now. So let's go ahead and get into it. So there's a lot of benefits to renting. Let's go ahead and outline the first couple. So the first one's very easy. When you're renting, you are not responsible for the maintenance or repair on any household item. For instance, if your roof needs to be reshackled, or your water heater breaks down, your laundry and dryer break down, anything in the kitchen breaks, anything regarding the home breaks or needs repair, any sort of maintenance, that's on the landlord. It's not on you. So second point is utilities. Often when you are renting with multiple other tenants, and you guys get to split that utilities bill. Instead of having to pay $100 for the water bill or the electric bill or the gas bill, you get to split that among all the tenants, and it ends up being a lot cheaper. Mobility is another great benefit to renting. You don't have to stick in a household for a super long time. The average lease is about 12 months long, and you're not tied to that property for a long time. This is important when you're early on in your life. If your job requires you to travel, if your job is unstable, you might get fired, because you never know whether you're going to have to switch locations or not. Fourth point is investing. Now this one's kind of important and a little tricky as well. My general rule of thumb is if your interest rate is above 4%, you're going to want to pay off that debt before you start using that excess cash to invest in the market. If it's below 4%, you should be using that excess cash and investing it in the market. Everybody kind of has different opinions on this one. A lot of people will tell you to pay down your debt first. Some people will tell you just pay the minimum monthly payment. My rule of thumb is typically 4%. Overall, renting is more flexible, and that's the biggest key. If you're in a point of uncertainty in your life, maybe you're not married yet, you don't have kids, you don't have a stable job, you're early on in your career, that's the stage of your life where you see most people renting. I'll show some stats later on in this video about what demographics are renting versus owning. So those are my main points for renting. Let's go ahead and move on to owning a home and the benefits that comes with that. So first things first, building credit and equity. When you're paying down debt, you're showing banks and lenders that you have the ability to undertake debt and pay it off at a reasonable rate or in a reasonable time period. You're also building equity in this home, and a lot of people might tell you that a home is not an asset, which is completely untrue. By the time you've paid off your home, you can live there for free, rent it out to tenants, do anything you want with it. It's your home. You're leaving your family an asset, and you need to see it as an investment. When you're renting, you are essentially building credit and equity for your landlord. Which brings me to my second point, which is you are the landlord. There's no lists of do's and don'ts. You can do what you want. It's your home. You don't have to ask for permission for pets. You don't have to ask for permission to put a nail in the wall. You don't have to ask for permission to do whatever you want to turn the basement into. It's your home. You can do what you want with it. You also can't get kicked out of your own home because you are the landlord. So this next point's kind of interesting. I want to talk about how it forces you to save, and a lot of people might have trouble with this based on their day-to-day habits, their impulsive buying, or just their personality in general. This is important because it teaches you financial independence. So I know not everybody might see forced savings as a good thing, but to me, that is a good thing. It teaches you some valuable lessons. So know your home is not the stock market. You shouldn't view it as a way to get rich. But 10, 20 years down the road, when you have a $500,000 house paid off, it may have doubled. And for most people, that's an absolutely fantastic investment. Doubling your money on $500,000 is incredible. Your house is very much tied to the economy in the city that it's in. This is important because most people that are buying a home are looking for some form of community or stability, which brings me to my last point, which is stability. Unlike renting, where you're looking for flexibility, a lot of homeowners homeowners are looking for a sense of owning an asset. You really get that pride of ownership when you buy a home. You get to completely customize it, get exactly what you want, build it from the ground up, and design every single room to your liking. That being said, this isn't for the nomadic or restless types. Overall, I believe owning a home is typically a little bit more costly than renting, especially in the short term. But in the long term, if you ever decide to get tenants, use it as a rental property, it's really a no-brainer. However, there is a lot of throwaway expenses that come with owning a home, such as property taxes, trash pickup, water and sewer service, repairs and maintenance, pest control, tree trimming, homeowners insurance, and any other insurance that you might get sold on. And obviously you can talk about the amount of money you throw away on interest in the long term. Typically, if you buy a $500,000 house at a 2% interest rate, you're likely going to pay in total $800,000 for that house over the term of the mortgage. Overall, what I want you guys to take away from this video is that there's no right option for everybody. Everybody has their own vision in life and their own personality. There's a time and a place for renting, and there's a time and a place for home ownership. It's really up to you. So you really need to ignore everybody that tells you that renting is throwing money away or that you're wasting money on interest if you're buying a home. The key takeaways is that renting is not throwing your money away, especially if you're using the excess money to make a greater return than you would with your house. But home ownership brings a sense of stability, pride of ownership, and a feeling of community. The option that's best for you isn't about money. It's about your vision in life and where you see yourself in the next 10 to 20 years. So that being said, guys, that's the most important thing I want you guys to take away from this video. I'm going to jump into a bunch of stats right now, so hope you guys stick around and enjoy this. So I found a bunch of tabs here with a bunch of data and graphs that I just want to share with you guys, both in the US and Canada, regarding home ownership and people that are renting, demographics, and all that sort. So the first graph I'm showing you here is saying that back to the 1960s, high home ownership rates aren't really new. It's consistently been above 60% for almost 60 years now. Now, I think this next graph is the most telling. You can see who is renting. It's people who are between 20 and 30. Everybody else essentially owns a home or starts a family and starts investing into a home. I mean, that's a likelihood as you get older. Now, I don't find this trend very surprising because it obviously takes capital to buy a house, something that a lot of people in their 20s lack. Also, people in their early 20s tend to be more mobile and obviously less likely to be married. Now, even though home ownership trends might have shifted, it still gives you the same range in terms of age of people who are renting versus owning. You go all the way back to the 1960s, it's still people in their between 20 to 30 that are renting. Everybody else after that seems to be investing in a home, looking for some form of stability. Rural Americans are less likely to rent. To me, this makes sense. A lot of the people renting are students who want to live close to campus, or people who have just recently graduated and got their first job and it's downtown in the city and you want to live close to your job because you also can't afford a car. This one's really interesting. So what this is showing is that low-income Americans rent much more often. At 50K threshold, you can see there's a greater chance, especially within your 20s, that you're renting if you make less than 50K a year. Anybody that makes more than 50K a year, there's a much higher probability that you are investing in a home, as depicted by this graph. So this last graph's about just ethnicity and the trends based on your background. I don't want to get into this too much. Just going to throw this graph up for you guys to analyze on your own. Here's an interesting one. Whether you're married or not, people who are married are much more likely to invest in a home rather than people who are not. I'm assuming this is because they're still at an early enough stage in their life where their personal life isn't stable and they're not sure whether they're ready to move from their current city or not. Potentially looking for love. Okay, we've talked enough about America now. Let's go ahead and dive into some Canadian stats. So similar to the US, about 69% of households in Canada, or roughly 9.2 million people of the 13.3 million, owned their homes. This hasn't changed since 2006. About 3.3 million households, or 25.2%, spend more than 30% of their gross income on shelter. So this is the threshold which is defined by the CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, to measure housing affordability. Basically, they're saying if you're spending more than 30% on your shelter, you're spending too much. Here's a cool one. There's a much higher ownership rate in recently built apartment buildings than in older ones, which to me, this makes a lot of sense. People who are buying homes nowadays prefer to buy new just because you believe you're worth more down the road. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Anybody under 35 were much more likely to own their house than rent if they made over $60,000. So that's kind of like that 50K threshold that you see in the States. If you make enough money where you believe you can start investing into an asset such as a home, you're much more likely to do it. So the average monthly shelter cost paid by households in Canada was just over $1,000, which I find extremely low. That was taken in 2011, and that includes both mortgages and renters. I also found this really cool website, which is essentially calculating whether you should be renting or buying. I'll leave the link in the description. It's an American website, but it outlines all, the minute details of renting and costs of home ownership. So definitely check it out. I'll show you guys a brief clip of it on the screen here. It comes with a downloadable spreadsheet. Really cool, and something you should definitely look into if you're trying to make this decision in your life currently. So basically, what are all these stats telling us? If you make more money, you're more likely to buy a home. Most people own a home. If you're married, you're more likely to own a home. Stats. Anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, and hope to see you guys in my next video. Peace out.